definitions you just given, and particularly the way you described it up front in terms of technology and scalability and a degree of breakthrough, is, I guess exactly that's the definition we use. And as you say, as opposed to a bricks and mortar, so whether it's a fur store selling more noodle or it's, as you say, an online thing, we definitely look for, is it scalable? Can you get go to market? Can you get traction? Can you do it quickly? And can you cross borders rapidly, so it doesn't actually have to be just within one country? Is it actually globally scalable? It's interesting, it's a little bit chicken and egg sort of question, because all startups eventually have to become a business. Because everybody says to you, it's a different mindset. Am I starting out as a small to medium enterprise, which as you say is typically a shop front, or am I actually starting out with a tech startup? And again, we can get into conversations later, but it's the differentiation also whether that startup is software or hardware. So there are differences, and there's differences in the scalability, but yeah, interesting. The other part that's interesting for me is that 5 years ago, or maybe even less, no one had a clue about what those definitions were. So this space is moving very quickly. And so to have people as young as yourselves here basically saying, look, this is my definition of a tech startup, and this is what I want to do, and I'm looking for global domination, it's kind of cool.
Any of you guys looking for global domination at this moment in time?
Yes.
You're definitely.
So so I came from a background of my family doing business. So my family they do teach me a few several rules for investment or like doing business. In order for me to set out any business that I want to commit to do it, it needs to be something sustainable, which is something that you can foresee that in the next 10 or 20 years it still exists, it's still happening. It needs to be something that's scalable, which means that it's not something that's just happening in a city or a country, but it has to be global applications. And it has to have a high barriers of entrance, which means a high intellectual property that not a lot of people can steal it.
So yes, are you looking for global domination?
Yes. The reason is that for my personal reference to commit to any business or to invest into anything, I would want the business to be one is sustainable, which is can foresee for next 10 to 20 years is still happening. It has to be scalable, which means that it's not something that only for a local market or regional market. It needs to be able to apply anywhere. And the third thing is have to have a high entrance of barriers, which means that it has to have intellectual property that a lot of people cannot compete to that. So if for example, if I invest into an F&B chain, that means that it's sustainable. If it's doing great, there's a restaurant that exists for like 50 years, right? It's scalable if I can franchise it, but in terms of entrance barriers, then it's really low. So for me, I have to validate all those things first before I put my time in any project. Yeah.
What do you think? Do you guys feel enlightened, intimidated?
Yes, enlightened.
It's different.
I'm feeling intimidated, so it's
It's different philosophy for investor too, right? I'm sure you agree. Is that like some people that want to, okay, I need the quick money, you invest in it. I need to see in the next 2 or 5 years it grow, and then you exit with big money. Or people that want to invest in the long term, that that it's going to be there, it's going to grow for the next 10, 20 years. It's going to be slower. Like my family business, we invest in software in Vietnam. So it took us 10 years to educate the market to actually use it. And it's only started picking up for the past, I think, 4 years. Mm-hmm. So the business has been 16 years, but like for the first 12 years, it's actually the education, R&D, and it's completely investment with no profit or revenue.
Yeah.
So it's different investor philosophy, and it's how you would willing to commit to an idea. Yeah.
You know what I really like about you, because I can clearly see that her family background has influence in the way she thinks.
Yeah.
This guy does not come from a business background. Mm-hmm. This guy does, in a way. But I think one of the things that I keep hearing is that I don't have business background, but I really want to do business, but I don't think I have the necessary training yet. Do you guys feel this way? Are you confident of your family business background to kind of shape your business acumen, and are you not confident that your family doesn't do business?
My family do business, but like the knowledge and the experience is not applicable in 20th century.
So the knowledge of your family is not applicable. What about you?
It's
Chris?
still a business, but like it's small, it's scalable. Yes.
So not everybody have that luxury of being able to be trained since they were young, right? So what is your advice to these guys, and what's your advice to this girl?
It's really interesting, and I'm curious. I'd like to start with a question, and is I guess a lot of what you just described. How much would you attribute to your formal school education and whatever qualifications that you've actually gone on to, or how much of it just purely comes from the conversations with your family?
I would say it's more from the family. So we have a business, right? So since I can remember, every summer when I finish school, most of my peers would just go to more school, more class, summer class. But what my dad would make me is to go to his company and do some homework and then do some work. So basically, I just do very simple things like just typing documents or just typing documents or just helping around and anything. But I get paid for it.
Yeah.
Like very small amount, but it helps me to value the money as well. Yes,
Yeah.
and I think one of the very important thing that he does to me is that he look at me as not somebody who's really young. He talks to me as an adult, as like this is a sense of work. This is how it's gonna be. You need to be prepared for it. Yeah. So he really respect me in terms of just being a human being. So I think it's also really helped.
So how should these guys maneuver the situation if they don't have a lot of business training?
It's interesting because listening to the conversation so far, my curiosity was very much about, do you learn this entrepreneurial skill and the business skill from a formal school education, or do you learn it from family and friends and people around you? We know one of the things that we found through research in Australia was that most entrepreneurs that actually want to be successful actually came from families that talked about business at the dinner table. So it's like they were immersed in it from a young age. So very little to do with our formal education school system. So if you actually don't, I liked your expression before, which was about my family has a business background, but it's not applicable today. And that was very much true for a lot of people. We had traditional businesses, old school. It was very much about the bricks and mortar. And then suddenly then this thing called the internet came along, and then digital technologies, and they've got no idea how to do it. But the basic principle of you have to make more money than you spend still holds true. And as you say, that's what turns a startup into a business, as you said before. In the instance that you don't have that background, now it's interesting, I'm going to take this question a little bit broader. Each of you are coming here and saying, I'm the founder of this particular idea and I want to get investment. One of the things that we look for with any investment is basically, who is the founding team? Not who is the founder, but who is the founding team? Because typically we'll say no one individual, as impressive as they sound, will have all the skill sets to be able to do product development, go-to-market strategy, finances, selling, and everything else. Again, the research basically suggests that most successful companies have 2 to 3 co-founders. And we actually look at a skill set that basically says, do you have what we call hackers, hustlers, and hipsters? Are they terms you've heard before?
Not hipster. Hacker, hustler, and hipster, yes.
Yeah, so basically, a hacker, that's who's the person that's actually going to create the piece of tech, who's going to do the coding, the hacker. Yeah. The hipster is the one who knows how to make it look cool. So it's like, it's where the Steve Jobs of the world actually came in. Was doing all the hacking in the background. He created a lot of the Apple platform. It was Steve Jobs who basically filled both the hipster and the hustler, because the hustler is who's going to get out there and sell. So again, this comes back to you might have the best idea in the world. It might be completely defensible, But unless you're going to get out in the market and sell, 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 and that is the biggest skill that we find in most startups are lacking. There's a lot of coders, and you described yourself as that earlier. You said I used to be a tech nerd, and I wanted to push myself to actually get out.
Actually, a hacker and a hipster.
A hacker and a hipster, yeah. So it's like, I just want to do the coding, but like, okay, are you now prepared to get out and sell and get on the TV cameras, which obviously you all are right now, so congratulations on that. But how do you overcome that background? And whatever background, whether it's a business background, whether it's a technology background, whatever, you find people with comparable skill sets and form a team. So it's like, it doesn't matter anymore whether you come from a very successful business family, whether you come from a poorer province in Vietnam, or what we call a region in Australia, or from countries. Everyone's got an open opportunity these days, and that's what's so fantastic about the current era. But you really need to make some very good choices early on about what are my strengths, what are my weaknesses, and who do I get to actually help supplement that, whether it's family, whether it's actually friends, or whether it's actually going part to an accelerator or a co-working space, and you get on board advisors and mentors that can actually help you build that skill set.
So let's dig deep into what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to pitch to investors and judges in a little while. And even though you're going to take a little bit more time to do the actual pitch, what I'd like for everybody to do right now is to think about it and pitch your project or your idea or your product in 30 seconds. And Tony will give you some really, really great mentorship advice. All right, so think about it for about 10 seconds.
I'm not sure who's got more pressure now, you for pitching on me having to give great mentor advice, but anyway, we'll see.
And while you guys are spending 10 seconds to think about your pitch, I'm gonna chat with Tony, and hopefully it's not going to make you guys not be able to concentrate. So Tony, when it comes to startup founders and some of the greatest business ideas, what are some of the greatest, I would say, starting out stories that you've experienced in your life and also for yourself? Because I've heard some great starting stories for you about your own life.
Oh, okay, that sounds intriguing. Stories as in, I'm not quite sure how to actually interpret the question, but I'm thinking it's like when the stories I love are when people actually, and we see quite a lot of this, when people are absolutely passionate about fixing a real problem in the world. And we'll come to that a little bit more when we talk about how to pitch. And there are some amazing people doing some super cool stuff. And as I said before, it's like there's now opportunities to make that influence. So when that passion combines with some technical know-how and ability to go to market, I think there's some really cool opportunities. And you don't always have to know how it's going to work.
Tell us a little bit about what you did when you were 25, because you did a couple of things when you were 25 and when you were younger as well. So what was your journey like?
Mine's a little interesting because I actually started out life as very traditional. So formal education, went to university, I was an aeronautical engineer, then went to the Air Force, but soon figured out that life was not for me, that I don't fit in the corporate world. So I haven't had a job since I was 25. And I then actually started my first consulting and strategy company. And so what that gave me was the combination of having some tech skills and tech insight, but also business strategy. Although still back then, the internet and World Wide Web hadn't really even been thought about. So it was quite different. But now, how that progressed was, actually getting into, I still have that consulting company as a strategy firm, but getting into software startups, and then building enterprise agreements or enterprise relationships with large global players, and then stepping now more into advising, mentoring, and investing. I really want to support and help startups. Yeah. But it's interesting. At 25, I remember the decision. I was terrified. And it's like I'm walking away from a stable job. I'm walking away from a secure income to get out and start something. Also at that stage, which is a little different than most, at 25, I had 2 children. So I had a house and 2 kids. So I had mortgage and family responsibilities. And I could only have done it with the support of my family, that they actually said, we believe in you, we're going to back you. Yeah, this might fail, but that's okay, we'll stand behind you. We actually don't think it will.
Wow, that's amazing. It must be super scary making that transition at 25.
I remember walking around the kitchen in a circle for about 2 hours trying to make the decision. And then eventually my family just looked at me and said, oh, for God's sake, just do it. This is what you keep teaching everyone else. Why don't you back yourself and do it for you? And I did. So having that support and family and friends and people around you and understanding, because a lot of people look at you and think you're crazy.
Yeah.
It's like, why not get a formal education? Why not actually go to university? Why not do all this? What do you mean you're going to go out and you're going to create the next Facebook or the next Uber or Grab or something? A lot of people think you're crazy. And the reality is, to go down this path, you have to be partly crazy. But that's part of the journey. And at your age, and I heard Richard Branson talk about this once, his view on life was basically, and I don't want to misquote him, but it was effectively, get your education, get something behind you, but then get out, try a startup before you have lots of responsibilities, before you have family and friends and everything, sorry, family and mortgages. So I obviously didn't listen. Because if you fail early and you find that's not the life for you, that's okay. Because failure is all part of the process, you learn from it, you can recover, or you actually choose to go back into a normal career. But at your age, seriously, you've got nothing to lose. And the experience that you'll gain by getting out and learning about business, learning about what does it take to sell, is just awesome. You'll always get dividends paid for that.
That's great. Well, I'm sure these guys are ready to sell themselves and sell their ideas. That came out, okay, sell your ideas. So who wants to go first?